So my name's Pasha, and I'm a co-founder of East London Productions, which is a sort of transmedia TV and digital production company. Previous to that, spent sort of nearly 9 years at Endemol running their digital strategy there. And obviously today's session is on crowdsourcing, and although crowdsourcing isn't inherently digital, it of course does, it has the digital space, and the internet has of course opened up many extra accessible areas for crowdsourcing to happen, including funding and in editorial sense as well, with sites like YouTube and Kickstarter and stuff like that. So there is a connection to it becoming more popular and more in recent times. So we've got an eclectic mix, I think, of panelists here who are going to present some of their stuff that they've been doing in this space from all different walks of life. And also we have someone back in London on Skype. So I'll introduce everyone as we go along. So in London we have Franny Armstrong, who some of you may have heard of. She's the director and funder behind a global climate change documentary that is called The Age of Stupid. And she sort of crowdsourced it for a number of different reasons, which you're going to find out about in a sec. So we've got a video to show from her as an interview, in case the Skype sort of doesn't work, as it often doesn't in these things. But she is on Skype as well, so we'll get a few questions from her as well. And then next we have Joe Twist here, from the commissioning editor of education at Channel 4, previously also at the BBC. And Joe has a couple of projects, one from the BBC and one from Channel 4, which really explore the sort of more creative and editorial sort of definitions behind crowdsourcing, and an interesting look at why a broadcaster has kind of entered into this space as well. And then we have Stefan Acquironi, I want to say. He hates me to say that, but how can I not pronounce it like that? He's going to pronounce his name correctly in a moment. Stefan also, much like Franny, is sort of mobilized, I think his village, or a village certainly, to help fund a movie that he's now selling here at MIP, I think. So it'll be interesting to hear some more about that. And then lastly, but by all means not leastly, but Richard Lorber over the end there, CEO of Kino Films, who releases over 20 films theatrically every year, I think, and has a huge catalogue of movie content. And I think Rich is going to give us a really good angle on how crowdsourcing affects, or doesn't affect indeed, the traditional film funding business. And hopefully that will spark off a lot of debate and things. So I'm going to ask a few questions of these guys after they present, but we want to keep it really interactive, so get questions ready and stuff like that. And if you've got questions, we'll try and feed them in as and when, but we'll try and make sure we have at least 10 minutes at the end for that as well. So firstly, I think we're going to kick off with a video of an interview with Franny talking about The Age of Stupid, and how and why she got it up and running. So I think if we cue that video, that would be great. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Franny Armstrong, director of The Age of Stupid, McLibel and Drowned Out, and also the accidental founder of a campaign called 1010, a climate change campaign, which came out of Age of Stupid. The Age of Stupid is a kind of documentary drama animation hybrid set in the future in the year 2055, when the whole world is devastated by climate change. And one guy there, played by Pete Postlethwaite, is looking back at old footage of us now, and he's trying to work out why we didn't stop climate change when we had the chance. I wanted to get that funded in the traditional way, i.e. by TV broadcasters, and they all turned it down, partly because they'd all had legal issues with McDonald's in the past, and partly because I was nobody, you know, I was a first-time filmmaker. And so with that film, I thought, I made that with the kind of maxing out credit cards, rich boyfriend funding model. But then when I finished the film, I realised that actually if you pay for it yourself, then you own the rights, and that is the key thing in terms of distribution. Because if the BBC or whoever had paid for McLibel, they would have put it on telly once, maybe twice, and that would have been it, you know, 1 million viewers or something, that would be the end. But because I owned the rights, then we could do the DVDs, the festivals, the cinema releases, or, you know, and ended up with, I think, 25 million viewers for McLibel, just off our own backs. So from that film, I understood that the key thing is owning your own rights. I'd never heard of crowdfunding. When we came up with the idea in 2004 we were just trying to think of a way that we could fund our film without giving away the rights, with us keeping editorial control. And, well, there was three things really. We wanted to keep the rights, we wanted editorial control, so we didn't have some, lawyer or broadcaster, executive telling us, what film we had to make. And thirdly, if there was any money made, we would like that money to go to the people who made the film and the people who believed in it and stuff, because, as I'm sure you know, there's been any number of hit documentaries in the past, but the way the funding was initially given, that means all the cash that comes in goes to distributors and middlemen and all the rest of it, and the people who killed themselves for 5 years making the film don't get anything. The basic plan with our crowdfunding model is we were going to get a crowd of people to invest chunks of money, and for that they get a percentage of the film, and they get paid back their percentage once a year for 10 years. But also the crew had to work at very, very low wages, essentially minimum wage, but to keep our costs down. But in return, they would also get a cut of the film. And so we're now 2 years later, and we've made our first 2 payments to our crew and our funders, which I have to tell you was so much fun. Yeah, sharing out, getting the pie and sharing it all out. Some people were getting 80 quid and others were getting 8,000, 10,000, 15,000, so some people were getting serious chunks of money, and obviously it was based on, how much time you put, from the crew point of view, how much time you put in, your level of the skills, so the editor would be getting a much higher percentage than, the person who was transcribing or whatever. So we launched our crowdfunding in a room in Soho, December 2004, with basically our friends, 30 people, and we raised about £15,000 that night. And then basically the word spread just through friends and friends of friends and friends of friends. And the first people who invested on that first night, they got a higher percentage for their money. Their money was worth more than anybody else, because at that point it was literally us standing in a room saying, we've got this idea. It was quite naff. There's a making of documentary following the whole Age of Stupid, and that event is there in the film. It's so bad, it's so chronic. Like, the idea that anybody would give us money, it was anyway. But then as the years went by, just people came, and more people came, and then at some point, I can't remember where, once we'd finished filming with Shell and stuff, then we were able to put it on the internet, and we did some press articles about it and stuff, and then we started getting strangers joining the crowd. Overall, we raised £450,000 to make the film, and then almost exactly the same again, a bit less, to promote the film. So £900,000 in all, from about, I've forgotten the numbers, 350 people, something like that.
Wow. That's very good.
Which leads on to what is the problem with crowdfunding, which is admin.
Right, okay. Yeah.
That is the problem with crowdfunding, because you can just imagine trying to make payments to all those people. Somebody's changed, somebody's moved, somebody's changed their bank account, somebody's split up with the person that they originally, just like admin. But that is really the only drawback. Okay. Really, everything else about it is purely brilliant. And there were so many extra bonuses to it that we hadn't imagined until we got underway. For example, everybody who was a crowdfunder and a crew was on our mailing list, like an internal mailing list. And we started realizing that anything we ever needed, somebody on that list would have it or know somebody who had it. For example, we ran out of money and we wanted to record the orchestra. We had a proper orchestral score written, but we didn't have enough money to hire a recording studio. So I wrote to the list, has anybody got a nice quiet room in London to record an orchestra? And got an email back, I've got a recording studio. Like, one of our funders had a recording studio. So like things like that, just on everything. Then the next massive bonus with our crowd is that, we had about 300 investors and 100 crew. That's 400 people who all want this movie to really, really succeed, as in, that's a 400 strong PR team. When normally a documentary is released, it has maybe one PR person or just the director. We had 400, and really those 400 people, we did this, we launched the film with a big premiere across the whole country, from a solar-powered cinema tent in Leicester Square, linked by satellite to cinemas all around the country. And we had to fill those cinemas without any advertising money whatsoever. And that's where our 400 people came in. They were going around the cinemas, they were flyering, they were going to local schools, doing talks, saying this event is happening, unbelievable. when I was making Age of Stupid, you know, it ended up taking about 4 or 5 years of my life, and I thought that was my contribution to climate change. And it was quite a good contribution, you know. But then as soon as we finished it, basically, we started screening it, and everybody was saying the same thing to us, which is, what can I do about climate change? And then it was like, oh, you know. Anyway, eventually we came up with this idea to set up this campaign called 1010, which is about cutting 10% of your emissions, which is actually an easy thing to do, particularly if you haven't started yet. You, as in an individual, a school, a business, the government, you know, whatever. And we set that up a year and a half ago, and it took off like the proverbial bat out of hell, and now it's running in 45 countries. And so at the moment I've accidentally seemed to be running a campaign organisation, which is not something, a charity, you know, which is not something I anticipated when I set off to make Age of Stupid. But that's the beauty of it, you know, if you set off to do these things, and who knows where they might lead.
Brilliant. Right, we should have, in the background, if we can switch to the computer, we should have Franny there in her home in Camden, I think. Franny, that's great. Really inspiring story as well about how that how that worked. And I think one of the really interesting things is obviously quite poignant at the end, where you sort of talk about where it leads. And I think we're going to come on to some more of that, actually, where it's not just about raising money. It's actually, there's a whole sort of deeper aspect in there. But I'm going to ask you a really boring question, first of all, which is to do with the legal side of it. And I know that because we talked a little bit about the contracting process. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, well, hello everybody. When we first came up with the idea, we went to see a lawyer, like film finance lawyer, and he said, "This is the most original film financing scheme I've seen in 25 years, but it's illegal." And so then, but then he said, "You can't do it because it's illegal because of this reason and that reason and blah blah blah." And so he helped us basically make it not illegal, which essentially meant getting clearance from this thing in the UK called the FSA, Financial Services Authority. But there's an equivalent in every country, and it's basically to stop people doing like pyramid selling and things like that. Anyway, so we had to go through the process of getting that legal approval, which cost about £1,500 if I remember it right. But then once we've done it, then we've got these, we drew up our legal contracts, and they're all like got official stamps. It's not illegal. And we put those contracts on our website if anybody wants to take them and use them. Although I think yours wouldn't be legal without, you have to pay for the stamp again, depending on which country you're in, but if you care. I've heard of anybody getting into trouble for not having this official stamp.
And your website's spannerfilms.net, isn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can download her version of the contract, which is quite useful. That's
I
good.
paid twice. We've already paid. No reason for you to pay as well.
And just quickly before we move on, something that, again, we're going to come back to a little bit later, but do you think it's sustainable? Is the crowdfunding model sustainable?
As I said in that video that I half heard, the problem is the admin. And so, you know, I mean, it would be quite easy for us to do crowdfunding now because we've already got all those people on one mailing list, and we could say, okay, we're doing another film, who wants to fund? And probably a lot of them would, you know. But whether you could keep going film after film after film, I'm not sure. Mainly just from the point of view of the person organising it. Like if like one, you know, funding body said to me now, we'll give you £1 million and you can keep your rights, I'd probably take that.
You'd probably take that option. And presumably because you also talked a little bit about the crew worked not on full pay, essentially, so they worked in kind, a lot of it. So, and that's clearly not necessarily sustainable either.
No, at the moment, it takes some like obsessive like me, who doesn't mind working for 5 years on minimum wage, to pull off a project like that with that kind of funding structure, you know. So, but there's a lot of people who can't do that because they've got, you know, dependents or whatever their personal circumstances are. So a lot of people do need to get paid, but then this is the, you know, that's the starving artist thing, isn't it? It depends how much you want to. Like, if you take, you know, broadcasting money or whatever, then you're going to give away your rights. So if you don't want to do that, if you want to keep your rights so you control your film, then something has to give, and often it's cash, cash to you, you know.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're going to leave you there shortly, and we'll come back to you at the end. We'll have you up on the screen.
Point my camera to the audience, charming though you are to look at.
I might, yeah, that's going to be difficult, actually. Otherwise, I would definitely do that. And we're going to ask Dr. Jo Twist to come up and talk about some of her projects, if that's all right. So we're going to leave you there, Franny, and move on to, I think, Do you know where your...
It's on the desktop.
It's on the desktop. Brilliant. And it's in here.
Yep.
Off you go. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Oh, Franny's still floating.
You might be able to just, yeah, drag it somewhere. There we go.
Hide you down there, Franny. Sorry. Hello, everybody. So, yes, I am a commissioning editor for education at Channel 4. I'm coming from this topic slightly differently and from a slightly different angle. We commission a lot of soft learning for UK teens, age 14 to 19. We target teenagers in their leisure time, not at school. We don't do curriculum-based learning. We do life skills learning. So I'm going to talk to you about two separate stories. And both of them are really crowdsourcing in some way, but neither of them are about crowdsourcing in terms of funding or finance. They're about crowdsourcing and a different kind of investment, that of attention. But both of them are about crowdsourcing loyalty to achieve some kind of value. I apologize if this is going to make some people seasick. It made me seasick when I first saw this. So it's a Prezi. Let me just check the time as well. So the first one is something I commissioned when I was at the BBC. I left the BBC about a year ago now. And I was a BBC commissioner, multi-platform commissioner for entertainment and Switch, which is the BBC's youth brand. And we did this with Hattrick, who came to us with this idea. They said, we've got these 4 awesome guys who are the top British YouTubers. They have huge audiences. Their names are Alex, Charlie is so cool like, Johnny, and Jimmy. And they have massive teen girls who just love every word they post on YouTube. Let's challenge them. Let's challenge them to do some crowdsourcing. Actually, sorry, I should have done this first. The second project I'm going to talk about is Battlefront, which is my Channel 4 education project. So Chartjackers was 4 YouTubers. They had 10 weeks, no budget, to crowdsource a #1 single from their fans for children in need, which is the big charity event that goes on to BBC every year to raise money for Children in Need charity. It's had over 3 million views so far, all the videos. It was a totally social media project with 5-minute TV slots on BBC Switch a week. It had 2 exclusive video blogs from the lads and a heck of a lot of social media activity. And the aim was for them to really be the Pied Pipers for their fans and for their fans to create every single element that would be required to produce a #1 single and to get it to #1. So for example, they started off in their first week asking for lyrics, and they used the mechanics of the web, mostly YouTube, but Twitter and Facebook and their own blogs, to do the crowdsourcing for them.
Hello, Jackarinos.
Are we going to call them that? Okay.
I was thinking though, because like anyone who watches or gets involved at all, we could just call them Chartjackers and we could all...
Yeah, we're all the Chartjackers.
Yeah, we're all the Chartjackers, don't worry, we're not the Chartjackarinos.
That you want to be. It is the first week now of the project, and that means we need lyrics for the song, because all you guys are so enthusiastic about getting the song put together, but we really want to jump on that and get it done as quickly as possible. So this week is going to be lyrics.
So what we want to try and do is write an 80s/90s type of pop song, because we think that would be the most fun to do. The way that we thought we could write the lyrics, and this is a bit mad, a bit modern and a bit new, but bear with us.
What we need you guys to do is in the comments of this video, just write one line of lyrics that we could use.
Now we want the song to be as cheesy a love song as possible. Metaphors, anything you can think of. And then we thought the best way to compile a song is if any of you out there are budding songwriters, have a look through the comments, compile a song, and then email it to chartjackers@gmail.com, and we'll pick the best one. Easy. And then we will have a song. Well, lyrics to a song.
Yeah, good. People have been emailing us offering possibly every type of service we could ever need with regards to this project, which is wonderful. For those people that want to sort of help design things or form the band and stuff, We'll just ask you to just keep watching for now. We're not going to need you this week. There's not that many weeks that we have to do this, so pretty soon we're going to be calling on your services in whatever way we can.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
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 So they had, actually, at the moment, it's standing at over nearly 4,500 comments of lyrics. And in the first week, when they put out that call, they had well over 1,000 comments back. It was one of the most commented pieces on YouTube that week. So as the weeks went on, they continued to do this. They had so many offers of help, it was unbelievable. People just wanted to do something good. And because they had grown up almost on YouTube with these 4 YouTubers and supported them from 2005, when YouTube first started, they really wanted to see them succeed. And eventually, they actually had a song. They had someone give up a recording studio and produce a song for them. Unfortunately, it was banned by the Radio 1 playlist. And if you get onto the Radio 1 playlist, that's how you get to #1, because it's the biggest radio station almost in the UK. It was deemed as too cheesy, and for BBC Switch, this was a slight issue because BBC was banning a BBC song, but it wasn't really a BBC song. We were doing this as an observational documentary, but it seemed a bit odd. So they decided, you know what? And this is when the fans started to realise that actually, you know, maybe they won't get to #1. And there began a little bit of a shift in attitude where they started to think, okay, well actually, you know, we've got the power to make this go to #1. So they started protesting outside Broadcasting House, and they started to go into Meet Space because that's where their audiences were and that's where they could make real change. They held a gig, as all good bands would do, and they invited their audiences, their fans, the people who contributed to this, to the gig in London. That's them. They performed there along to the track that they played, and even Chesney Hawkes turned up. There he is, and there he is, see, to the left of Charlie. So they went and they actually, you're getting communicated to. I hope it's nothing personal.
Don't know.
Towards the end of the 10 weeks, they you know, started to get their fans to produce all the fan art for them. They produced posters. Their fans worked overtime to promote this single because all they needed to do was to buy it on iTunes to get it to #1. And here was the cover art. Sorry, it's a bit pixelated. Finally, the day came for it to be released. It was up against some really, I can't remember now off the top of my head who it was up against, but some, like Mariah Carey or someone like that.
The last 10 weeks of my life,
and here's the song.
Of working with 3 of my friends from YouTube and the amazing YouTube community to try and create a charity single. The song is called I've Got Nothing, and the whole thing has been created with nothing but the goodwill of the people of the internet. The main aim of this project is to try and raise as much money for children in need as we possibly can. But the project's called Chartjackers, and at the same time we're trying to see if we can get this extremely cheesy pop song, completely different to anything that's in the charts at the moment, into the UK charts. This is the guy that made the music video. It took him a week, so he hopes you'll like it. Here it is, I've Got Nothing.
I'm not the best looking, I'm not the best dressed, hey, I don't know. I've got nothing, give me a chance, I'm better than the rest, hey girl, listen up. I've got nothing, you know love ain't forever. I've won the greatest prize, and I'm feeling now or never, when I look into your eyes.
As well as playing. So obviously they got everyone on YouTube, all their fans and their followers, to post videos of them singing along and dancing along to the track. We also got Pudsey Bear, who is the big yellow bear, who's the icon of children in need, to perform. And those 2 people who were singing it, who recorded it, again, they were auditioned through YouTube, and we actually brought them down. They got them down in a kind of X Factor style audition. Because of time, I'm going to, unfortunately, cut that short, but you can watch it online. So it got to number 36 in the mainstream charts. It raised £10,000 for children in need, and it got to number 1 in the independent UK charts, and I think that's a massive win. But more importantly, the value that it gave to those involved and to the fans of the 4 YouTubers was incredible. Some of the comments like, the crazier and more exciting the task, the more it gives a greater cause for you to want to do more and more. Worked my little tweeting networking arse off for this. I feel good to have made a difference. Check out my channel for a video of the Chartjackers at BBC Switch live today promoting the song in front of thousands of people. We need ordinary lives to enjoy the crazy things that happen sometimes. Looking forward to your normal videos. This is the power of the internet used for a good cause. Spread the word, the Chartjackers project. So very quickly, the second one I want to talk about, and we can kind of go into questions, I guess, after this, but is the Channel 4 Education project called Battlefront, which is up for a digital Emmy tomorrow night. Fingers crossed, we will win. This is our key flagship campaigning sort of multi-platform program. It's online, it's TV, it's social media driven. It's 12 young campaigners on a mission to change the world. It runs over 9 months of a year, and it involves real-world events and stunts as well. Here's one of them, Kaya in the middle, not the blonde one, that's Kimberly from Pussycat Dolls, who was real beauty. This is Kaya's campaign. They flash mobbed Westfield. Here's a short, actually I might just skip through that. We tried to, this was a different kind of take on crowdsourcing, because what this was about was crowdsourcing young people's passions to support a cause. And that is very, very difficult to do, or is it? We tried various things, and again, apologies for this being a bit pixelated, but on the website is a hub for all the social media activity of each of the 12 campaigners on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on their own blogs. We tried to do a bit of a gamification, which is now an evil word, on the site, so to get everyone involved in setting up their own campaigns. So if you actually named your campaign, you leveled up to level 2. If you actually put your campaign on Facebook, you leveled up. This didn't work. What did work was lots of competitions, and it's a really naff, cheesy way to actually get attention and to get support. We had a 12th campaigner competition, we had a presenter search for the online fortnightly web show, and we had a TV show that was filmed, and the filming of those TV shows for T4 actually produced the biggest spikes. This is an example, so this is Malam, who we found online. And he, again, was a top YouTuber who already came with a massive audience, and it was his crowdsourcing of support that got him the presenter gig.
Ooh, thank you so much, guys. I won the presenter search for Channel 4's Battlefront show. I'm so excited to be presenting it, and I couldn't have done it without you guys, because I know a ton of you voted, and thank you so much. So basically, the show's about young people campaigning, getting their voice heard, spreading positivity, and I'm so excited to be part of that. So definitely check it out. In fact, the Christmas special is up now. So if you click the box, you can check out the Christmas special episode. Also, if you're interested in music, there's a competition at the moment called the Battlefront Anthem.
So he mentioned something that's quite key, which is thank you. And one of the things that we found in these two projects, and it's probably a no-brainer to think of this, but it's the value and the transactional relationship, and what is it that people are getting out of being involved in these two kinds of projects. And to us, crowdsourcing is a bit like designing a bit of a game of value. This is a quote, quite a long quote, from Frank Rose, from who was interviewed by Henry Jenkins about his new book. If we get rewarded all the time, because reward is key to all of these crowdsourcing ideas, the dopamine release goes down and we begin to lose interest. If we never get a reward for what we're doing, we get frustrated and lose interest even faster. The most effective reward pattern, it turns out, is one that has a certain amount of randomness built into it. Slot machine operators have known this for decades, but it was a neuroscientist at Washington State named Jacques Pensep who connected it to behavior he calls seeking. Seeking or foraging is one of the most basic survival instincts in the animal world. And in Chartjackers and Battlefront, we saw this happen. We saw where the randomness and jeopardy of being involved really worked for these projects. But there are also examples of where young people themselves were galvanized as crowds to create value for themselves. And the payback was about recognition, was about credit, but it had to be a two-way street. There had to be a social contract where they were getting involved in something that they felt was worthy. In the case of Chartjackers, it was about doing something good, raising money for charity, and supporting the people that they loved and felt passionate about. And in the case of Battlefront, it was very much about feeling connected to something much bigger than them. and something meaningful via campaigners. And ultimately, being involved meant that the accountability was with them. The success or failure of these projects was down to them. And they created value through very unique architectures of participation, i.e. the web. And it showed them that they have the power and they can be the agents of change. And once they invest their attention into a project, they had a stake, and it was up to them to make it a success. We're about to embark on a new crowdsourcing project, which I can't talk about because we haven't signed the contract yet, but it's going to be even bigger and even more awesome than those two projects. Sorry, I probably ran completely over time. Apologies.
It's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great. I want to just ask you one quick question so we can swiftly move on with Stefan's project. But we're seeing some patterns arise here in terms of the necessity for leaders in the crowdsource sense. So it's all about usually one or a couple of individuals really sort of being passionate about a project. And that was quite clear, obviously, with Chartjackers and both Battlefront as well. But as a commissioner, you've got a budget, so you're not looking for funding through crowdsourcing as such. So what's the attraction as a broadcaster? What are you looking for out of it?
Well, we suffer in this industry of not having a diverse enough representation of opinions, perspectives, and activities and people involved in media that is created for us. So actually one of the benefits is by tapping into a huge user base or fan base or crowd, you're bound to get diversity. And diversity of opinion and representation of that diversity is absolutely key. So you're getting different perspectives and you're getting challenged in different ways. And that's one big benefit, I think. And
presumably there's also the promotional aspect, which Franny mentioned as well.
Absolutely.
Suddenly you've got a crowd of people who are all your ambassadors for the project. So
absolutely.
Your audience is kind of there from the start.
And that was what was interesting about Chartjackers was initially they started saying this cheesy 80s pop song isn't the kind of song that's going to make it to #1. And that was evidenced by Radio 1 banning it from their playlist. But actually, it was like a kind of, look, it's actually within your power. All you need to do is to tell 10 people to go and buy the track on iTunes, and you have the power. And it was a media literacy lesson, if anything, for them.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stefan, if you'd like to take to the lectern.
Thanks. Okay, so my name's Steph Acker, and I'm a producer from Birmingham in the UK, and I'm going to tell you a very short story about Tortoise in Love. It's a romantic comedy, not a documentary. It used crowdsourcing, although I had no idea that's what we were doing at the time, both to fund it and to make it. And it did it in a way that didn't involve paying crew next to nothing. We actually paid our cast and crew union, if not above union rates. So I'm going to do a couple of things in the next sort of 7 or 8 minutes. I'm going to show you the trailer in a few minutes, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the mechanics around it, because Franny mentioned the legal side of things, and there's a few tips that I've got to share to do with the financial structures and some of the models and mechanisms we use that might be useful. But first, I just want to tell you a bit about how it came about. And that really starts in Birmingham Airport in January 2008, where I was snowed in 26 hours waiting for the French to clear the runway at Charles de Gaulle Airport. And during this time, Guy Browning, who is the writer and director of the film and was my business partner in a couple of other not completely unrelated businesses already, he's an international writer and public speaker and business guru, humorist writer. He phoned me up while I was in Birmingham Airport and he said, Steph, I want to make a film. And I thought, oh, damn, I knew there was a reason he got involved with this business in the first place, and I've now realized what it is. And he said, don't worry, I've written a script already. I wrote it over Christmas, which immediately made me terrified. And he said, and it's completely executable within my village. So we don't need to spend money on locations or props or anything like that. And his village is the village of Kingston Bagpews in Oxfordshire, home to this hair salon, amongst other things. And this is Ivan Kay, who you may recognize from Layer Cake, having his hair done in the village salon in Kingston Bagpews on Southmoor in Oxfordshire. A village of around 2,000 people, big cross-section of society, of demographics, and basically, very shortly after this conversation with Guy, I found myself in a village meeting in a space roughly the size of this in Kingston Bagpugh's Village Hall, talking to around 300 villagers. And Guy had said to me before, well, we're really, really keen. We've had a meeting already. They're really enthusiastic about it. And they want to make this film with us. You're going to come and tell us how we're going to do it. And I stood in front of these people whose life experiences were inestimably vast and huge, but whose experience of film was virtually nothing. I think someone there had made a film once, but that was about it. And they obviously made the documentary that covered this whole project. And very quickly, what happened between that meeting and the production wrap, only 5 months later, is that we equipped a village of people in England with the skills and resources to make Tortoise in Love. And when I say we equipped them with the skills and resources to make a film, they didn't write it, Guy wrote it, they didn't act in it except in some bit parts, and they didn't do the camera stuff. That was all done by completely professionally paid crew and cast. But they did do the hair and makeup in the salon. The Women's Institute did the catering. And you can imagine what that's like as a lady, possibly who may or may not lunch, in the Women's Institute in Oxfordshire, doing 100 meals 3 times a day for 6 weeks. And they were absolutely immense. If I ever wanted to get anything done ever in the future, I'd ask the WI. They were absolutely extraordinary. And of course, we now have a network of people to help us do what we're doing now, which is marketing the film. This is Dougie Ovenden. He was an engineer and became our props master, made a large number of the props in the film. This is Leslie Staples, who was one of the Calendar Girls in the Calendar Girls movie with Pat Dando. Pat put me and Leslie up in her home, as did around 40 other villagers, put people up in their homes for the duration. And her husband had just retired from a board position in a multi-billion-pound company. He became our village orchestrator. He was in charge of making everything happen in the village. So this wonderful, eclectic bunch of people made a movie, and I'm going to show you the trailer, if that's okay now, very quickly.
Hello, stranger!
Tom Collar, I knew you'd be back. What's the big city got to offer that we haven't?
Hot women, I'll bet.
I bet you didn't get one, though.
What's that beautiful music?
It's Anya. She's my new au pair.
So you found yourself a man yet?
No.
Don't worry, we'll find you a nice Englishman.
All the good ones are taken.
Doesn't mean you can't try them.
Hello, Tom. Would you like a cup of tea?
Once in a while, a man will fall in love.
Are you okay?
I think so.
Tom's in love with Anya!
Very, very slowly.
You're in there, mate. Don't move too fast, though. Give it another year or two.
He's got it bad, hasn't he?
You talk to plants, but you can't talk to women.
You get a lot more sense out of plants.
Why can't you just kiss her?
Because you can't just kiss people. There's a lot more to it than that.
Like what?
Preamble, background checks, that type of thing. You can't just kiss.
Maybe he plays hard to get.
No, men don't play hard to get, because we all know they're not hard to get.
What you got to remember is that all is fair in love and war. That's because love and war are very similar.
That's when he needs a little help.
What do women really want?
Oh, shoes.
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 Have you had your hair done?
Yes. Do you like it?
Yeah. Makes your shoes look bigger.
But when a whole village comes together, things can speed up.
What are you doing in here?
And miracles can happen.
Cleared for landing.
I cannot describe how wonderful this experience was, because everything about a normal film set, which I had some experience of, was totally the opposite. If I say can-do attitude in a kind of management bullshit way, which is my professional background, you don't believe what this means until you see somebody source the red arrows for you to fly over your village for a film. So this was incredible. So Guy really had not been lying when he said he'd found a village to help make the film, but crucially, they also helped to fund the film. We did a lot of technical stuff to try and make our film investable in. And Franny talked about the difficulty around the Financial Services Authority and the way they regulate share offerings. We did this. We did it without having to get Financial Services Authority approval. And just very quickly, in the last couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you how. So we had a limited company, which in the UK is a very easy thing to set up. We treated it as a single-purpose vehicle for this film. And we paid a lawyer a couple of £1,000s, just actually less than that, to write a new set of company documents, our new Articles of Association. And we used a non-film lawyer, which is really interesting because he was able to cut to the chase of what we wanted to do. He wasn't surrounded by ideas of how film finance worked. He just knew how business worked, and he knew what we wanted to do. We wanted to set up a private company and sell shares in that company, and we didn't want to have anything to do with dollar paths or first return or anything like that. So what we did, we set up Immense Productions. We set up a charity called the KBS Trust, and we gave the charity a golden share in the film. The charity was set up to benefit the village, so the village had an indirect stake for all of the work they were doing. And then we authorized 8,300 different type of shares so that the villagers could also buy a stake in the film. So we issued these B shares to investors. They were non-voting B shares, so as a board, we can arrange ourselves and we can decide when we think we've banked, hopefully, all the money from the sale of the film and issue dividends to these investors. And it was as simple as that. The money will come in and it will get distributed out amongst the shareholders. And we did this also within the UK tax structure, so it was an EIS scheme, so these investors got tax relief on their investment and on future proceeds. We also got the cultural certificate from the UK Film Council and obtained a 20% tax credit for the film, which was very useful in paying for post-production. And we have a mixture of investors, ranging between people who put in, one guy put in multiple tens of thousands of pounds, through to villagers who just wanted to buy a little stake and they put in 20 quid. This is how we did it. It cost very, very little. Company formation cost 20 quid. I said we paid about £2,000 to the solicitor to set up our articles. These other things cost 40p each because that was the price of a stamp, and that's all we had to do. So getting the EIS certificate, issuing the tax forms, doing the UKFC cultural certification all cost virtually nothing. And because my background was in management and business, actually I was able to do all this stuff without paying an accountant or a lawyer to do it. So if you're in business and you're trying to get into film, or if you're in film and you want to make a film, get someone who knows business and you'll save a huge amount of money on this sort of stuff. And then we had to find the shareholders, and this was the last bit. We were a private company, so we couldn't market the share offer. We had to introduce the opportunity to people and then tell them they could invest if they took a conversation with us. So we used direct mail to inform a targeted list of high net worth individuals about the existence of a business plan, which is a piece of legal rhetoric that I've so far got away with. We use social networks like LinkedIn and Facebook to reach out beyond our immediate friends and family to offer them the opportunity to invest. We did have a website for locals, but of course websites can be accessed by anybody, right? So people from outside were able to find out about it and invest. And of course the most powerful catalyst was the village newsletter, and that's what brought the most amount of money in. And that was the total budget. Most of it came through the sale of these B shares. We got a little bit of funding from a rural projects fund, money from the tax credit. You always end up putting a bit of your own money in. And we got £5,000 for sponsorship from a couple of brands in the area. So that's the total budget. But as you can imagine, the value of what was contributed by the village was enormous. And this, in total, was absolutely overwhelming and much, much more than the cash contribution. So that's a very potted introduction to Tortoise in Love and some of the mechanics. It is for sale at the moment. Maura is here from 7 and 7, so if any of you are buyers and you think you want to watch a screener, she'll be around. But I'm very, very delighted to talk to anyone who wants to find out more about the mechanics as well.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks a lot for going into quite heavy detail on the finance.
Sorry.
No, it's good. I think hopefully that's really useful for everyone here, and certainly I think it opens up the kind of question, how easy is it to get into? Just quickly before we move on to Richard here, I wanted to ask, so basically, what happens now? I mean, obviously you're selling the film here, but what happens after that? You know, does the, I mean, presumably the village turns into a studio now.
Guy's an ad man, and he made a promise to the village that at some stage in the future, I think he's given us a few years still, 10 Tappins coaches being the Oxfordshire-based coach company, would line the main street in the village to take the villagers to the premiere in Leicester Square. So this is now what Maura and I have to do in the next few weeks.
Fantastic.
And I'm sure the lady who owned the stately home, which was a key linchpin of the plot, will benefit, if it does successfully, does well, from a few more visitors to her home as well. So.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And lastly, Richard, if you could take to the stage and talk about a little bit about the kind of the traditional methods and how sort of crowdfunding might fit into that.
Hi, hello. Everybody, can you hear me? Yeah. Before I start, I'm just curious who all of you are. Could you raise your hand if you're producers or filmmakers? Just want to get a sense. Oh, that's good. And would you also raise your hand if you're in the industry on the commissioning side or in programming development? Okay, so good. And the others of you are other? How many are other? Okay, well, that's often the most interesting category. We'll come to that later. I am the CEO of a company called Kino Lorber that was formed about a year ago through acquisition of a company that's been around for 30 years called Kino, started by a friend of mine. We went to college together, and I've had companies called Fox Lorber and such over the years. And we basically acquired the company and combined resources, and now we have a company that has about 25 people based in New York. I guess we are the leading, we're arguably the biggest of the little guys in terms of companies that do art house and documentary distribution the old-fashioned way, in the sense of releasing films to movie theaters, selling little plastic discs that used to be called DVDs, now they're sometimes called Blu-rays, and we're very engaged in all things digital with output deals with Netflix and YouTube and Amazon and many, many more, and dealing with the alphabet soup of SVOD, NVOD, AVOD, and all that stuff, running very fast, as we can, to outrun the decline in the traditional DVD business and the softening of the theatrical market. We, in the US, release about 24 films in theaters, both on 35 millimeter prints and HD and various other digital formats, and about 60 of our titles per year on DVD and in various digital formats. Of all of the titles we release, about a third are docs, and docs are probably the fastest growing part of our business. Just as more background, these are some of the doc features that we have released this year in current release. Award winners, festival circuit darlings, films that are sought after by cinephiles as well as passionate interest groups. And I'll come to that in a second. Some of these may be familiar to you, but the reality with documentary features in the US is that it's always a tough slog. Most of these films perform theatrical with a box office not counted in the millions, but counted, if you're lucky, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, well, this is the big question. Why am I here? Well, what do you think? Big money? No, but I think, I did get a ride from the airport, so that was good. Have any of you been to the after parties? Well, I haven't been invited to those yet. But realistically, what has compelled me to take this crowdfunding and as an extension of crowdsourcing very seriously is the interaction that we've been having over the past 2 or 3 years with more and more of our filmmakers who are waving the rebellious banner of do-it-yourself producing, do-it-yourself distribution, and do-it-yourself funding. The DIY model has become a major crusade cause in the US and I think widely around the world. But in the US, there are fewer opportunities for funding. There are no subventions, there are no subsidies, there are tax schemes in various states, but it's basically a raise the money yourself game. And as we all know, the internet does change everything, and there are new paths to market for independent filmmakers who are finding tools and techniques through internet and social media that allow them to bring their films, both as a development project and as a completed work, to new audiences and to connect with their audiences on a direct path. So we've been paying close attention as a traditional commercial distributor to see what we can learn and to avoid being effectively disintermediated by all these do-it-yourselfers. So realistically, we look at the do-it-yourself model, sometimes DIY, as what we call in the US is DWI. Many independent filmmakers are so intoxicated with the do-it-yourself idea that they're just driving wildly into walls. They are getting their projects a quarter funded, half funded. They're spending 2, 3, 5 years of their lives, as Franny indicated. Often they get sucked into a situation in a do-it-yourself mode without realizing that they're going to be basically postponing most everything else that they wanted to do and find their role in life to becoming more what I'm doing, which is a distribution company. We have taken a different approach, and we tried to position ourselves as a hybrid distributor with a DIT model, where we want to effectively leverage the huge resources and ingenuity and entrepreneurship of these independent filmmakers with the skills and talents and company resources that we have as a commercial distributor. We have the kinds of output deals. We have our own sales team. We have the art department. We have the resources that can help the independent filmmakers accomplish more in a with a multiplier value by working with us in a kind of a collaborative spirit. So crowdfunding has become more and more to become more on our radar, in that we see filmmakers coming to us with projects either half-funded or completely funded, with also funding available to support distribution. And I'll come to that in a second. In the landscape of independent film production, particularly documentaries, it's no surprise that more and more films are being made, but actually fewer and fewer are being seen. What we see on television in the US, as you're seeing around the world, and as we'll see at MIP, of course, are reality series and every imaginable variation on what I consider to be some fairly cheesy, sleazy themes. But that's the way of the world, and the filmmakers who are making high-quality independent documentaries, which they're able to do because of inexpensive digital equipment and the ability to recruit friends and family, are finding that they have a finished film. They can edit it in their rec room on their own laptops and have something that can be presented but cannot find a way to have it seen by audiences. What crowdfunding does, by raising the money to make the film, it opens the door to building audiences even before the film is made. Unlike the examples that have been discussed here for the most part, or 2 of the 3 examples that were discussed here, in the US, crowdfunding at the moment is not an investment-based business. It's micro-patronage. What that means is the contributions from the tens and hundreds and thousands of people who will contribute as little as $1 to a project is not an investment stake. Even if they contribute $1,000 or $10,000, it's pure grant, and there's no return expected except possibly an incentive, a gift, an opportunity to meet with a filmmaker, and a whole range of various rewards which are important, but they're not financial rewards in the sense of taking an investment stake in the film. There are 3 key platforms, internet-based platforms, that have been established in the US, and they operate, I think, internationally in the past 2 or 3 years. The biggest one is Kickstarter, and you can go online and find Kickstarter.com, and they'll explain what it is to you. Kickstarter is a platform to attract independent projects from filmmakers. This can be the funding for the development of a film, for the production of a film, for post-production, for cost of rights, for distribution support, anything you want it to be. And it doesn't only have to be about film. There are all kinds of funding projects that are being presented in the arts, in social mission issues, and various other enterprises. Kickstarter started, as I mentioned, about 2 years ago. To date, overall, it has raised over $30 million across 15,000 projects. The model for Kickstarter is that if you set a goal for the project that you have, whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, if you meet the goal, you get the money. If you don't meet the goal, you get zero. It's an all or nothing game, and it's a big bet. And you set a number of days or a period of time to get that point, and many filmmakers like the pressure of having to make it work or they lose it all. Another company smaller than Kickstarter, started about the same time, maybe a little earlier, is Indiegogo, which has a slightly different model. You keep whatever you raise. Both of these companies charge fees in the 4 to 5% range. There are some additional fees for processing of the credit card contributions. With Indiegogo, if you don't meet your goal, you get to keep your money, but you pay a higher percentage back to the organization. The third company, which is the most recent and the smallest, Rocket Hub, is really more of a cultural mission. They have a belief in the revolutionary aspect of crowdfunding and are trying to motivate more and more people to get involved. But they are, as of now, they've been the least established and least used of any of these companies. We've had several dealings with filmmakers who've gone through various aspects of crowdfunding. I'll give a few examples here. Jennifer Fox is a pretty established American documentary filmmaker. Her film, Flying Confessions of a Free Woman, was sold all over the world. It was released theatrically in the US, sold on television and such. Her new project is about something that's been a passion of hers for over 10 years. Her documentary about her Tibetan spiritual teacher, a very important Rinpoche in Tibet. And she tracks him and his life and his family and such. So far, she set a goal of $50,000 to be used for clearance of rights and for production and for distribution support. To date, she has raised about $35,000, and she has 55 days to go. So we're waiting and watching to see how she does. The Banjo Project is a fascinating project, which we're hoping to acquire for some set of rights, which looks at the musical instrument of the banjo in American culture and how this instrument was often scorned and was ridiculed, but really had its seeds as part, it was seeding the evolution of a very authentic American folk tradition, which is not widely known. It's very surprising how many people actually love banjo music and how many closet banjo players there are, the most famous of which is the comedian Steve Martin. And he's been very involved in this project. They set a goal of $25,000, and in, I think, 3 weeks, they raised almost double that. Again, through the process that the Kickstarter site and others like it allow them to reach out, social media, send emails, friendly e-blasts to friends and family, and gather a constituency focused on this particular kind of content. The third title is a documentary about a peculiar phenomenon that is asexuality, about people who have no sexual persuasion or no sexual interest. They're not homosexual, they're not bisexual, they're just asexual. The documentary is being developed by Angela Tucker. She's actually completed shooting, and she had a modest goal of $10,000 to pay for editing post-production. She has raised $11,000, and now she will launch a new crowdfunding campaign to help support the distribution process of the film now that it's nearing completion. What's interesting in looking at the crowdfunding phenomenon in terms of docs is that docs are really made for crowdfunding. They are very successful crowdfund projects because they're constituency focused. They bring together people who have similar interests. Docs that have an activist or an advocacy thread where people want to be part of it, they're voting in effect with their financial commitment. A cause is very compelling, and they have a personal, passionate personal tale to tell. Those are the kinds of things that have been most successful in this doc crowdfunding landscape. The actual process of crowdfunding works a lot like a documentary. The engagement that the people who are undertaking crowdfunding involves telling their personal story, why they're involved, and what they care most deeply about. They're collaborating around a particular purpose, which is the subject of the film. And the process itself, in raising the money, is almost as much of a mission as getting the film made. We have learned from these tools and techniques and have basically launched filmmakerdirect.com. If you go online, you won't find anything on the site yet. We own the URL, but we haven't populated it yet. We're developing a business model that will provide a set of tools to allow us as a hybrid distributor to work more convincingly with filmmakers who can find the kinds of tools they need to advance their own do-it-yourself ethic with partnering with us as a do-it-together distributor. And finally, we have acquired the URL of Crowdfund Match, which is one way that we can actively leverage the crowdfunding success that filmmakers have by agreeing to provide funding to give actual cash that is applied to marketing and distribution for projects that get crowdfunded. We give the filmmakers an incentive to tell their potential funders that any money they contribute will be supported and money will be provided in same amounts by a fairly well-known commercial distributor who will get that film seen. And that's the most important thing right now, we think, in this surfeit of more films being made than can ever be seen. We have to find ways to direct more of the crowdfunding resources into audience building and having these important, passionate works which involve great sacrifice and great effort on the part of filmmakers, help them find their audiences. And crowdfunding seems to be an interesting path to that. So there you go.
Thank you very much. That's great. We've just, that's brilliant. Thanks, Richard. We're just out of time, actually, so we won't be able to take any questions, but I'm sure these guys will hang around for a few minutes if you've got any sort of detailed questions around that. I'm just going to wrap it up slightly with a kind of summary, I think, of what we've seen here. And it seems like one of the key things to getting a crowdsourced or crowdfunded project up and running is passion and being an ambassador or finding an ambassador for your project and reaching out to people. It sounds like it's a lot of hard work. You don't get paid very much. And it can take a long time. So I think as most of you are producers, you probably already know that because that's what you have to do anyway. So I guess there's nothing really left to be said apart from get out there and do some of that. It's worth doing. And the payoff exactly is that's why we're all in this business. So get out there and do it, I think. Brilliant. Thank you very much to our panelists here. Thank you to you guys. Cheers. Great.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you. Thank you.